We're drinking today, guys. We're drinking. It's just one of those days. I made notes. I made notes for this episode, and I had them, and then I ate dinner, and they were gone. I didn't even put them anywhere. They're just gone. They're just gone. They're probably wherever all my sunglasses keep going. So we're mostly gonna wing it. We're gonna wing it, which is what I do for most videos anyway. So it shouldn't even be that bad. So I keep seeing this come up, and I've seen it come up. I've seen it come up for years. Where's the difference between immersive and maladaptive daydreaming? Like, what even is it? Is there even a difference? And there's actually a little bit of a backstory here. I mean, not a lot. Don't worry. A little bit that I think will add context to the confusion. So we're going to start there. So as you know, or probably know, or probably will know very soon if you're hanging out in an MD community, that maladaptive daydreaming was like discovered in 2002. And then that paper got sat on for a few years. And then 2009, 2011, a couple other papers came out. And now in 2021, like that snowballed, like we're gaining awareness pretty quickly now. Thanks, TikTok. But for a long time, which is actually a really short time, I guess, in the scheme of things. But for a long time, it was just maladaptive daydreaming. Everybody who Googled why they daydreamed weird or stumbled across some post that explained their experience, the word they were seeing was maladaptive daydreaming, because immersive daydreaming wasn't a thing yet. Just like maladaptive daydreaming hadn't been a thing before 2002, immersive daydreaming wasn't a thing before. This is why I need my notes. I can't remember what year, but it was pretty recently. It was pretty recently that Milena West, who is an Australian researcher, published a paper. I think it was called Empathy, Emotional Regulation, and Creativity in Normal versus Immersive versus Maladaptive Daydreamers. And this was the first time that we saw like immersive daydreaming in an academic paper as an academic concept. I can't deal with not knowing. Give me 1 second. I'm going to find the year that paper came out. 2020? That paper came out in 2020. That can't be right. There's got to be another paper that did that first. God damn it. I don't think it was 2020. It might have been 2020. I don't think it was. At any rate, what you're going to notice, if you're pretty diligent about looking up this term, is that it started popping up before the paper was published. And here's why. Because very early on in maladaptive daydreaming research, the leading theory sort of behind how we're capable of it is that it was an inborn innate trait. I mean, from right off the bat, pretty much they believe that it's just a talent some people are born with. Some people just have the capacity to go super deep in daydreams, and other people just don't. So the term itself had been around before that paper was published. But that's sort of where it got its, like official wings. But still, maladaptive daydreaming is the one that's been around longer and the one that gets more attention because we're the ones with a problem. Like that's what happens. Maladaptive daydreaming gets all the press. It gets all the Google hits. So when people look it up, that's what they find. Immersive daydreamers who aren't maladaptive find that first. And it leads to questions, like, is my daydreaming maladaptive? Or even maladaptive daydreamers who come into the community, they hear about immersive daydreaming, they're like, oh, am I actually that? Like, where's that line? What's the difference? And even like, what's the difference with normal daydreaming? Like, how can you tell you're even immersive to begin with? And it's so irritating because daydreaming is such a vague term. It's such a vague term. It covers everything. You've probably heard this stat that like even your average person will spend 50% 50%, upwards of 50% of their day daydreaming. But they're not using daydreaming the same way we are using daydreaming. And you'll even hear maladaptive daydreamers say things like, I think maladaptive daydreaming is actually kind of a stupid name for this because it's not like daydreaming, you know? Which I kind of agree. I don't really like the word daydreaming for it, but whatever, that's the one we have. It's fine. It's fine. But everything kind of gets thrown under the umbrella term of daydreaming. Any off-task thought gets called daydreaming, whether it is or isn't. So it's like daydreaming, it's mind wandering, it's fantasizing all together that make up that off-task thought that eats up 50% of the average person's day. And then time. This is one of my pet peeves, but a lot of people put an emphasis on the amount of time. So, like, even if we ignore that there's a bunch of stuff under off task thought, daydreaming, that isn't really daydreaming and is what we do actually daydreaming, or is it more like fantasizing? Anyway, just throwing all that out there, all else being equal, the time isn't what does it. No magic number. Said it a million times, no magic number. So it's not like you can time yourself while you're daydreaming and be like, oh, I daydream like for 4 hours a day. Guess that means I'm maladaptive. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. So the difference between normal daydreaming and immersive daydreaming is dissociative absorption, which everyone does. There's all kinds of ways one is dissociatively absorbed. You experience it even if you're not a maladaptive daydreamer, even if you're not an immersive daydreamer, will experience it when you're like into the book you're reading, when you're doing a repetitive task like highway hypnosis. This is dissociative absorption. Driving down old familiar roads, and then suddenly you're like, oh crap, I'm here already. No memory of the trip. Totally normal. Happens to everyone. Probably. Immersive daydreamers do this with daydreaming. They attend to the daydreaming while pushing out most external stimulus. They become absorbed in that one thing with a sense of presence. There's some kind of vividness to it. Now, this isn't the same for everybody. Like people talk a lot about, what they see when they daydream in their mind's eye, but it's not all visual. Like it can be presence in a different way. Visuals, obviously, but it can include other senses. It can be primarily auditory, like you can narrate. Some people don't even see like anything. There's a word for it. Shoot, what's it called? Aphantasia. They don't really see things visually in their mind's eye. It's kind of more of a narration process. And the emotional properties as well. Immersive daydreamers can get wrapped up emotionally in their fantasies, and it's different. I think it's different from what the typical daydreamer would think of when they think of daydreaming, because they sure can get absorbed in it, but not really to the point an immersive daydreamer would, not to the point of being able to sustain it for a lengthy period of time. They won't form that emotional connection with it. Like mind wandering is more like when you flit sort of from thought to thought, and they just play out. This is like default mode network stuff, if you want to look that up. When you're not actively engaged in something else, your mind, it doesn't just shut off. It does other things. That's its default. But immersive daydreamers, their mind just doesn't flit from thought to thought. It carries out some sort of plot, generally. There's a thread there, a purposeful thread. It's not really off-task thought. I mean, it is off-task thought, but this thought in and of itself is a task. It's intentional or purposeful. I can hear already the maladaptive daydreamers going like, no, it's not on purpose. It just happens. That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. I just mean your mind is not idly moving from thought to thought. There is some sort of progression within the fantasy. And both of those are completely normal and healthy. Like there is nothing weird about immersive daydreamers. There's something kind of weird about immersive daydreamers. They're not exactly typical, But a lot of things aren't exactly typical that are still totally normal. Red hair is not exactly typical, but there's nothing weird about redheads, is what we want you to think. It's fine. It's healthy. It's kind of cool. I mean, honestly, it's kind of cool, right? I think even most maladaptive daydreamers out there will be like, yeah, well, for all its ups and downs, it is kind of cool. Give me 1 minute. I don't know, friends. You you think I should just Lindsay Ellis this bottle? Oh man, what was I talking about? Fuck. Right, immersive daydreaming is cool. That's where we were. So that's where we start out. That's where we start out. Immersive daydreamers, not quite your typical daydreamer, but whatever. It is just another weird and wonderful aspect of humanity. Tell me if I start getting red. Oh god. It's like it's not the drink. It's the middle of the night and it's been a weird day. That's all. I don't even drink. All right, so we've we've got our normal daydreamers subgroup. We have immersive daydreamers, then subgroup maladaptive daydreamers. So it's kind of funny that in like the history of our concept of these things, it came maladaptive daydreaming first and then immersive daydreaming. But the order I guess it actually happens in, like in your lifetime, is you're an immersive daydreamer first and then you become a maladaptive daydreamer. You're just born an immersive daydreamer. Most of them will be fine. Most of them will be fine. Some of them turn into maladaptive daydreamers. There is 1,000 reasons for that. That, I mean, I guess we're not even going to talk about here because I don't know. There's really nothing to say about them. It could be anything. Like a bunch of things will tip you into maladaptive daydreaming. Trauma is the big one that everybody talks about. And yeah, that it's a big one that's like a quarter of our population. But there's other stuff. Isolation, loneliness could be a coping skill for something else. And then sort of outlived its ability to be adaptive in your life and is now maladaptive. Some people just, for no reason at all, no reason anyone can figure out, they just sort of noticed that they could do it and they indulged it way too much and got in way too deep before they figured out, like, oh, that's a problem. The point is, most people can't point to any specific trigger or at least any specific moment. Some people can. Some of that, traumatized quarter of us can very easily be like, nope, that was it. That was it. Um, but most other people are like, I don't know, it kind of just crept up on me. Like I thought it was fine at first. And then there's a whole bunch of people like me. Like my experience was, I mean, I've always known I was an immersive daydreamer. I didn't have the words for it, but I knew that my daydreaming was something kind of different. I've been this way for as long as I can remember. I cannot pinpoint when it flipped from just a cool thing I did as a child to having an adverse effect on my life. I don't know. The process probably, realistically, probably took several years to really sort of solidify itself. And I was young. I didn't notice until, I don't know, adolescence, I guess, when I realized I wasn't growing out of it and I got worried. Even then, it probably still wasn't maladaptive. It probably didn't become maladaptive until more like, I don't know, high school maybe. I don't know. I don't. It's hard to pinpoint a time. Is the point, because it's a spectrum. So if you want to know when immersive daydreaming becomes maladaptive daydreaming, there there's no number you can look at. There's no number of hours that is going to tell you. There is no, score on the dissociative absorption scale that's going to be like, oh, no, you're immersive and you're maladaptive. There's nothing like that. There's no solid number you can look at. It is something you have to feel from within. But sort of the guideline for how you feel out that difference is the diagnostic criteria. Because, like it or not, maladaptive daydreaming does have a definition. It does have a criteria that you need to meet to be a maladaptive daydreamer. Nobody can tell you if you are or aren't one. That is true. Like, I don't want to sound like a gatekeepy douchebag, but it has a definition, and it's okay if you don't fit that definition. You might just be an immersive daydreamer. Like, That's fine. And it's fine if you don't know. It's fine if you don't know. Like, you don't have to shut yourself into one of these labels if you're unsure. Like, it's a journey. I don't I don't know other words for it. I don't know other words for it. It's a journey. You don't have to know. So anyway, I don't want to throw like the dictionary definition of maladaptive at you because honestly, I think it's a stupid name for this. I Not a stupid name. I mean, it does have a certain ring to it. I mean, I've grown rather fond of it, but but I don't think it's the best descriptor. So just ignore the actual words, maladaptive daydreaming. Just ignore those for a second. The key to when it switches over is distress and or dysfunction. Those are the two that are going to get you. Like I said, it's a spectrum. Some people are going to be over here like they're just going to be pure immersive, like everything is totally awesome and they don't have any problems with it. And then over here is, you know, my life has been utterly destroyed by my daydreaming behavior. Um, you know, catastrophic. And then there's all these people in between. And some of them are immersive, but kind of leaning towards the maladaptive side. And some of us are maladaptive, but we sort of lean towards the it's. I have some problems, like I'm still a maladaptive daydreamer, but it's, you know, just got some problem areas to work on. That's fine. That's just normal variation. And those middle areas, those middling areas are the people you're going to find who are confused, who struggle with how they want to identify themselves. Probably the ones who are looking for those numbers that can help them with that struggle, that can help them just once and for all settle it. Like, which one am I? So I can just like get on with my life and figure out if I need a friggin' therapist or not. Which, by the way, you need a therapist. Even this guy over here who's like pure immersive. Was that the maladaptive side? That guy? One of them. You don't have to have a problem to see a therapist. See a therapist anywhere, they're fine. But rule of thumb, when you start preferring the daydreaming to real life, when you start choosing the daydreaming over real life, blowing off invites, blowing off work responsibilities, staying up all night and being perpetually tired, not being able to stop pacing, even if you're injured, when you start shuffling off these real things so that you can continue daydreaming, that's when you're probably leaning in to problematic waters, you know? And that can be hard to pinpoint for a while because it can hit different people in different ways. Like, you may be a social butterfly. I know the stereotype of us is that we're like introverts and loners, but that is just a stereotype. Like, that's but anyway, the point is you can excel. You can excel socially. You can excel academically, but still be dealing with all the dysfunction, or all three, or just two, you know, and they're the pie charts, or what are those things? Those like web graphics. I don't know. I don't know what they're called. And then there's the complacency. That sort of comes with it, you know, where you're like, it's not ruining my social relationships. I don't have social relationships because I don't like people. The world is stupid anyway. Like, okay. You might actually be a misanthrope. Those exist. Just do some introspection before you decide if that's the case. You know, does the world suck because the world sucks? Which it kind of does suck. Like, I get that. Or does it suck because you're comparing it to a fantasy that you spend most of your waking time in and you're not building anything in your real life that would unsuck things? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know your life. But I'm just saying, don't be so quick to come to the conclusion about which one you are. Put some thought into it. Put some research into it. If you're one of those people who's in the middle, it can be blurry and really frustrating, but you know, you'll figure it out. I'm sorry if you came into this video hoping that there was going to be some sort of test you could take. There isn't. Your best bet's to talk to a professional, and maybe they can help, you know, walk you through your feelings and sort things out. But it's really something you have to figure out. for yourself, because nobody else can tell you whether or not you're distressed. I don't know if you're in distress. No one knows if you're in distress except for you. So anyway, the difference between immersive and maladaptive daydreaming is there kind of is no difference. If you're a maladaptive daydreamer, you are an immersive daydreamer. You are. You just are. You were born that way. You're also a maladaptive daydreamer, but you're an immersive daydreamer too. And the immersive daydreamers out there, you might be a little maladaptive from time to time, but you do not have to label yourself with a disorder. If you're perfectly fine in life, if it's not bothering you, do not be worried about it. You're okay. So that's it. That's the difference. All right, well, that's it. Sorry for the abrupt ending, I guess. Like, bye.